In this CBT nugget, we're going to look at planning and archive. Now, this is part of kind of this overarching thing of the email lifecycle. I want you to think about this. You get so much email. What are we going to do with all this email? In the past, we may not have necessarily made this situation better. We may have made it worse. And so this is part of what we refer to as messaging records management, or MRM. And having an archive is one piece of this. As a matter of fact, this particular video ties very closely into the next video where we look at another part of MRM being the retention tagging, and you'll see how these tie together. But we're going to start with archiving, and boy, I think you're just going to have a lot of fun with this. So our agenda, first of all, we're going to start with an overview of messaging records management, how things kind of tie together and why we're looking at archiving. And some people might say, well, why don't you just start off with retention tags? Because I need to do that. Well, because this discussion on archiving is important, and then the retention tagging ties into it. And this has a lot of compliancy and policy issues involved in it. So we'll take a look at MRM and some of the business problems that are created, and then we'll examine what an archive is, what the components of it are, what it really means to you, and then how to plan for an archive. And this includes whether it's on-premises, off-premises, or even a third party. It's a way of how to start getting planned out for your archive. And probably where we're going to have the most amount of fun, and that's why we're going to get to it pretty quickly, is we're going to implement an archive using the Exchange 2013 features that are available to us. And I think you'll get a lot of information out of just seeing that implementation. The idea of messaging records management kind of comes from this, well, look at what we have here. I've got this, pretend this is a messaging server. It's your email server, and it's all your email servers. And think about all of the email that's coming into your email box today, tomorrow, and that's come in over the last, 5 years, 10 years. Think about this. Are you required by law or some sort of regulation or compliancy to maintain email for a certain time period? Are you required to get rid of it? And this is my little picture of a trash can. Sorry. Are you required to get rid of it at a certain time? This has kind of created a series of problems because for a lot of messaging admins, they basically haven't managed this at all. And what MRM is about is actively managing this. Now today, there's a lot of legal reasons your mail has to be managed. For how long you have it, where is it located, can you discover it when you're looking for it? However, in the past, a lot of companies kind of left this up to the admin. And here's kind of what usually happened. And you can imagine this because you may have experienced this yourself. Again, go back to our messaging server, and I've got little mailboxes for all my users inside a database. And right now, let's put a limit on those. Let's say it's a 2 gig limit. I know, it's not too bad, huh? 2 gig limit, 2 gig limit, 2 gig, not 26, it's 2 gig. 2 gig limit for all my users. Now, users are collecting email over time. If we've got good spam and antivirus stuff, they're not collecting garbage, but they're collecting email. They use this email for their jobs. It's part of the flow of business that they have access to this email. So they keep storing email. Eventually, you know exactly what's going to happen. The email boxes are going to get filled up. Well, in the past, here's what the Exchange admins have looked at, is they've kind of gone, well, you know what, they've hit their 2 gig limit. I have a choice. I can either increase the limit, which means I've got to go out, purchase more disks, add them to my high-speed storage device, whatever that is, that gives me all of the IOPS for performance that I need for my Exchange server. This is going to be expensive, very expensive. Also, there's some risk in doing this. There's planning involved in adding these disks and adding this disk space. This is just a pain. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I just don't want to deal with it. So what a lot of admins did is they basically set up the prohibit, send, and receive and all that kind of stuff and said, no, if your email exceeds 2 gig, it's your problem. Well, this really created a huge problem because now, guess what? And you've seen this because we've all experienced this. We actually created policies and procedures for users, right? When you need to, your email box is getting too big, go ahead and save it. Save it to A PST. Okay, not a bright idea. Never has been, never will be. This is IT creating a business problem that should have never been created. We just had a hard time with the tool sets that we had back then. So think about this. You're saying, well, what's the big deal with all the PSTs? Well, all of these users have all of these PSTs that they're creating as their own, well, can we use the word archive? Their own personal archive? And here's the problem with all these PSTs, and I'm just working with one user right now. Where are they putting those PSTs? You got one of two options. You know, they're either going to put them on their local box, local. Well, think about that. We've created kind of a problem for the user trying to get through their daily lives with business. They need to use these emails to follow up with customers, whatever the issue may be. Well, searching through these PSTs to find emails is very time consuming and very difficult to do. Also, think about what's going to happen with that user if their machine crashes. I know you can almost feel my stomach actually hurts right now because we've all been there, right? The machine crashes. They've lost their PSTs with valuable business information in it. And what's the response from the IT department? Well, we told you to make sure you had a local backup. Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. Well, here's option number two. If option number one, usually users learn really quick. If they experienced option number one, to go to option number two. And option number two is really simple. Guess where they're going to store their PSTs? You know doggone well where they're going to put their PSTs. They're going to put them on another server. Yeah, just like that. In other words, wherever their home folders are, that's where you see a lot of them, right? You see people that will go, oh, I've got a home folder. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take my PSTs and instead of putting them locally, I'm going to copy them up to my home folder because I know that the IT department backs that up. So, well, in a way, as an exchange or as a messaging person, I kind of solved the problem. I forced all the users into making their own little personal archives with PSTs. And then the users figured out that if they wanted to be able to retrieve anything in the future, they'd have to put them up on some other server where their home folders were. Well, basically, I made it somebody else's problem, right? This is SEP, somebody else's problem. Because now it's the server guys' problem and their disk storage issue. So now they can go out and buy more disks and deal with all of that. See, this isn't working. None of this is working well at all. And so what we need to do is get control over this, and we need some options to bring to the table of taking control over all of this. And we have that now with message records management. Some of the things that we can do, and one of the first things, what we're doing in this video, is we're going to get control of this whole storage mess that's out here, this archiving problem. And we're going to give users a great way to archive and make it so that they can search that archive, and that if you need to do e-discovery, you still can do e-discovery across that archive. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? And no, it doesn't mean we have to increase the mailbox sizes. And no, it doesn't mean that we have to buy more disks, high-speed disks. We can actually take some of those garbage low-speed disks we have laying around on the floor somewhere. No, I mean it. We can. We don't have to go through the super risky stuff and all the high-end planning and mess with our high-end storage. We can set up an archive on very low cost, very, low cost hardware. It's easy to do. I don't even have to do it here. I can move the entire archive off to the cloud if I wanted to. I just wrote the word archive, but move it off into the cloud if I want to, or some other third-party product to help me with this. And this is why we're starting with archives, is that I want to show you how to do set up an archive that you can in Exchange for MRM, and then we'll do the retention tags in the next video of how to move data into that archive. But get this kind of concept that we've got this problem. Oh, by the way, did you know those PSTs that are out there, when we get an archive built, oh man, you got to remind me, because you can bring those PSTs back in. In other words, we can not only fix this problem going forward, we could fix the travesty that was created before us and grab all those PSTs and bring them back into our new archive. Yeah, you certainly can. It's kind of cool. So I'll tell you what, that's kind of the overview of where we're going with MRM. And we're going to start off with the archiving stuff. Let's start off with it kind of examining an archive. In Exchange 2013, the proper name of the archiving is an in-place archive. And here's some options for the archive. First of all, let's not make this too complicated. Here's what an archive for a user is. It's another mailbox for them. Now, before you start yelling and screaming at me, wait a minute, you were just talking about mailbox limits, high-speed storage. Now we're going to create another mailbox for them, give them more places to screw up all my storage and make me spend money? Oh, hang on. So an in-place, it's just another mailbox. So let's take, I've got a mailbox server, and let's get some architecture in here. Here's a database that's in there, and I've got a user's mailbox out there, and I'm just going to draw the mailbox for the user in green. And so what we can do is on the same server, we could make another database, and we could put an archive for them. And I'm going to do an archive in purple. Purple. That's kind of purple, isn't it? Yeah, it's purple. I like that. And so where can a user have an archive? Well, they can have an archive, which is just another mailbox for that user, and they can have it on a database on the exact same server that they're already on. Now, in a very small environment, is this good? Sure, it is, because we're going to talk about that you would actually, once you archive, we're going to talk about the fact that you're going to put this into a DAG as well. So sure, this might be good, but this is, for the medium size and the larger size, this is not necessarily what you want to do. This is wasting disk space, the high-speed, expensive storage disk space that I bought for my servers. So you probably want to put it somewhere else. Now, before I give you your other options, let me just tell you that you're going to notice this when I demonstrate this. The user sees this archive both in Outlook 2007 and better and Outlook web app. And I'll show this to you, so don't panic. I'll show you if you haven't seen what an archive looks like in Exchange. Some other places that you can put this. Well, here's the other kind of cool thing. I can put it on a different mailbox. Mailbox 2. In a database, and I can put their archive over there. What's really cool is that I could start out maybe today like this and then move it to like that later. You can move archives later, so this makes it really kind of simple to start out small and grow larger. But I want you to think about kind of the bigger picture here, and we're going to talk more about this when we get to planning for the archive. But think about this: high dollar storage here, because that's where the user's primary mailbox is. And then I'm going to archive things that the user doesn't need to get to all that often. They don't need to see all that often. They're not looking for all that often. I'm going to put that on slow, cheap storage. Yeah, I can put it on slow, cheap storage. So I can go grab all those old hard drives that are laying around in your closet, right? And just and spin them all up and make some cheap storage for this, and create an archive location. This is why we're also going to want to throw it into a DAG, but we'll get to that because you're using all those old cheap drives. They're going to fail at some point. So, but see, there's another option for you. Another location where you can put an archive, and this isn't the only one. But let me just kind of say one of my favorite places, and we're actually going to focus more on this a little bit later on, is to rather than put it to another mailbox server on premises. Ooh, I use that word. I love that word. On premises. I'm going to put it in the cloud. And specifically, if we're in hybrid mode, and we're going to talk about hybrid mode a little bit later on in the course. So if we're in hybrid mode with O365, and don't yell at me because you're actually really going to like this and want to consider this. I can put my archives up here. This way, it is literally somebody else's problem. Specifically, it's Microsoft's problem. They have to take care of the storage. They have to take care of the hard drives. They have to come up with all the storage space. And of course, they've made it relatively, virtually very inexpensive to do so. So yeah, we can go to a separate box. We can go to an archive, but I also want to throw this out here right now. Not everyone is going to use the built-in Exchange 2013 solutions for an in-place archive. And not everybody is going to want to necessarily do with this. So I just want to point out that there are third-party archiving solutions. And the reason I'm pointing this out is that third-party solutions may offer you different types of message record management that you may need for compliancy reasons that are different than what Microsoft provides. I know several customers that they intentionally have to go to a third party for both their archive, and they do all their e-discovery through that archive, and that's a different set of people that manage that entire piece for them. So it's part of their compliance, and following their regulations. So there are plenty of third-party solutions, so you're not just limited to Exchange 2013. But I got to tell you, what Exchange 2013 gives you, first of all, is pretty cheap. It works really well. I think you'll be pretty impressed. And it's not that hard to set up. Well, that's kind of the concept there with how we're going to do the archive. Let's talk about planning that archive a little bit, and then we'll actually do it. Planning for an archive requires that we do a little bit of math. Now, I'm going to use small numbers, not because you can't handle the big numbers, but because the small numbers are easier for me to do on the fly. And also, it's more important to get the concept of what the math is. It's not really that bad. But we need to understand a couple of things when we're done. We need to know the total amount of storage that we're going to need for the archive. So, total storage for our archive, and the number of databases that this is going to require. And then we need to think about this with redundancy. Now, I can't spell redundancy, so redundant. Ooh, I think I got close. What do you think? Total. I didn't spell total correct, but well, kind of. It's T-O-T-A-L. Anyways, good enough. So these are the three primary things we want to come up with here and see what the numbers kind of look like. So let me give you a scenario. And like I said, I'm going to do a pretty simple scenario. Let's say that we've got, we're going to start this off with 100 users. So I've got 100 users. I know that's not very much, and they currently have, we'll say, a 2 gig limit on their current mailboxes, and I want to be able to put an archive in for them. Now, there's a couple of things you need to think about with this archive. Is going forward, about how much mail past their 2 gig limit are they going to be putting into it over a period of time? Now, one of the ways you can do this is, I mentioned in an earlier video, coming up with the basic user mail profile so that you can gauge over time about how much email is going to get stored. So that's part of it, using the, and let me just jot that down here for you, the user mail profile, user's mail profile. This is how much mail they're going to end up receiving. But also what a lot of people need to really focus on is all of that existing mess out there, the PSTs. So what existing PSTs do I have out there for my users? Now, just to give you a little couple of separate operational notes, you can have PowerShell. If you know how to use PowerShell, you can use PowerShell to go out and look at everybody's storage, the servers, the folders, find all the PST files, and come up with a total number of how much PST storage is currently taking. You can also do it on a per user basis. So that's kind of what we're thinking about here, is we need to know about how much PSTs are out there. Now, this will allow us to set an archive limit. Now, what you do is let's say that I'm going to pretend that each user, they've got another 5 gig of PSTs out there per user, but I'm going to set a limit. What you can do, you can set a limit on the size of the archive for each user, just like you would their mailbox. My limit that I'm going to choose to set it to is, I tell you what, let's set them to how about this? Let's set them to an archive limit. Let's use an easy number of 10 gig. If I only need 5 right now, let's go ahead and use 10. I can always extend this later. So now the question is if I'm going to do an archive of 10 gig for those users, how much storage total do I actually need? Well, the math isn't that bad. So it's 100 users, and let me change here to 100 users times 10 gig equals, what's that come out to? I'm going to leave it in gig for right now. What, 1,000 gig, which is what, really a terabyte? Now, for this small environment, a terabyte, I know that's not that big of a deal, but let's, like I said, keep the math pretty simple. So users times whatever I want their archive to be gives me this 1,000 gigabytes of size. Now, here's where the challenge comes in. So the total amount of storage I've got an answer to. Okay, so I need 1,000 gig. Number of databases. This is the one that gets a little bit challenging. I need you to think about your disaster recovery. Now, this is something that from the first Exchange course with Greg Shields, he talked about, and it's something that I'm sure you've worked with. How big can your database actually be? So your database, what size should your database be? We talked about this even in this course when we were doing DAGs, because it matters. What we are concerned about is how big is your database being, how long does it take you to recover that database if you should lose it? And it needs to be within your SLA. And that's what we had talked about earlier with DAGs. Well, the general recommendation is about 200 gig, but if you used the role requirements calculator, you may have come up with a different number, but you need to know what the maximum size of the databases that you're going to have on your system to deal with your own recovery should you lose something. So let's say that our maximum size is going to be 200 gig. Well, all of a sudden, take a look. I need 1,000 gig of storage, and the biggest database size I can have is 200 gig to meet my disaster recovery. Well, the math is my brain just fried on me. The math is what? 1,000 gig divided by so what's that? Divide by 200 gig, right? And that'll give me how many total databases I need. And in this case, I end up needing, dun, 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 dun. What is that? Is that 5? Yeah, that's 5. I told you I needed to keep the math simple. So I need 5 databases. Now, that's not that big of a deal, right? You know how much storage you need, so you tell somebody, I need you to put in, a terabyte worth of disk space, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to make 5 databases. So number of databases, 5. Redundancy. Keep this in mind. An archive, especially for many companies, this falls under some of their regulations and compliancy, and in your case, if it does, you got to make sure that this is available. So a great tactic to do is to also make a copy of your archive as part of your DAG. Now, I'm not saying go 3 or 4 levels out. As a matter of fact, when we talked about DAGs, we talked about, replicating or copying out those databases, across sites and going, sometimes 3 or 4 or 5 levels deep or 6 levels deep. This you only need to go 2 levels deep. I mean, you just need to have that immediate resilience. You're still going to want to run a backup on this, of course. So let's say that we're going to do redundancy and we're just going to have 1 additional copy. Well, that takes our total number of databases so that I can use it in a DAG up to 10 databases now. So that kind of starts our planning for us. I mean, it's really not that bad when you think about, overall how you're looking at it. I just got to make sure I have enough disk space. Got to think that through first. And then how many databases I need to have based upon my disaster recovery requirements and the specs for my maximum database size. And then, I've got a DAG. Let's go ahead and put it into a DAG and make it, so I've got some redundancy in there. And that's really all we've done for planning for that archive. Well, you know what? This is cool, but let's go in and do it for real, because then you'll see so much more about the archive. Okay, so let's go ahead and set up an archive. First of all, I want to show you that what we're going to do is we're going to play with the user Bob first. Bob, there's Bob. And here's one of the kind of little tricky things I want to show you real quick. I don't see any information across this column about archiving for the users. And so I just want to show you how to change this. I usually change this when I'm working with it. See this add remove columns? You can go in here and choose what you'd like to see listed here. Now, keep in mind that I'm zoomed up pretty big in my browser, so this is actually probably going to make things a little bit worse. But let's. I'm going to go in and I say I want to see their archive database and whether they are archived or not. So I'll say OK. And you can see right now, and I'll just hover over this. Nobody has an archive database, including Bob. And I'll just scroll through the list here. You see nobody's got one. I haven't set one up yet. And for the archiving state, right now it's none. They don't have it. So the first thing is I I need to be able to set up an archive. Now remember what we started out with. An archive is its own database on its own server. In this case, I'm going to put it on MBX1. But and let me just show you. I'm going to go down here and let's pretend for a second. I haven't done anything to set up an archive. So I'm going to go to Bob. I'm going to scroll down here, over here, and you'll see it. You'll see it listed. You'll also see it if you go into Bob's properties. As well, and you can go through his properties and see it. But here's enable archiving. Right now it's disabled, so I want to enable it. As soon as I hit enable, it's going to come up and say, okay, well, what database do you want to use? Okay, so the first thing I need to do is make a database. Then I can come back and enable the archive. Now look, I could do this all graphically, but I also want to show you how to do this in bulk. In other words, for an entire OU of users. So let me do this. I'm going to switch to the PowerShell mode on doing this. Now, the first thing I'm going to have to do is create a database. So to make a new database, we'll do new. Oh, wait a minute. Let me show you this real quick. Because, oh, yeah, I want to show you this testing command. Let test archive connectivity. What it's going to do is you can test whether a user can connect to their archive or not. And right now, you already know I don't have an archive yet, so this should give me a nasty message. I'm going to test. You test it by the user's email, bobs@company.pri. And you can see it comes up and it says, cannot log on. User does not have an archive mailbox provisioned. So the answer, computer says, no, you can't do this. Okay, well that's fine. I haven't set it up yet. We'll come back and we'll test this. So let me clear the screen. Now I'm going to make a new mailbox here. Now you can do the same thing graphically if you want. I'm just going to do it with PowerShell real quick. So, not a new mailbox, a new mail database real quick. So mailbox database. There we go. And for my database, I want it on server MBX1. I can choose what server I want it on, and the name of it. What do you want to call it? Something I can spell, preferably. Yeah, let's get creative and call it archive. That'll be fun. So this is just one database that I'm creating. Remember our planning. If we needed to create, 50 of these things or 20 of these things, I'd have to create them. So I'm going to do new mailbox database. And he'll go out to MBX1. Now, I want you to notice, just like if you're doing it graphically, you get that message that says, hey, you got to restart the information store. And we've talked about that earlier. So let me go ahead and just restart that store real quick. So get service. Let's see. The name of the store is MS Exchange. Wow. Exchange IS. And it's on computer. MBX1, do me a favor and restart service. Now, once the service restarts, did I type that in correctly? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, once the service gets restarted, one of the things that Exchange doesn't do is it doesn't, if you do it through PowerShell, it doesn't mount the database. So let me just go ahead and mount it. Mount database. Database. And it's, what do we call it? Archive. You're going to have to remind me because I'm going to forget. At least I can spell archive. So it'll mount the database. Now, I want to tell you, one of the common mistakes is if you're doing this, like if you're automating the creation of a series of databases, a lot of guys will forget to mount them. Don't forget to do it, because then you get all kinds of nasty error messages later on. So it's all you have to do is mount the database to fix it. It's just make sure you mount the database. And the error messages will tell you if the database isn't mounted. So I've got a database out there now for my archiving. Now all I have to do is, let me clear the screen here, and we can enable this for a user. So tell you what, let's enable this for Bob first, and then we'll do it for like an entire OU. And we'll do it with Bob first just to make sure that it works. Now again, you can go back to the graphical and do this graphically. I'm just going to do it through PowerShell since I'm sitting here and can do it here. Oh, and let me just kind of show you. I'm going to use the enable mailbox. Oops, I'm not typing. Why am I not typing? Oh, here we go. Enable mailbox commandlet. Now, just to let you know, you can use it this way, but I'm going to show you a special way to use it because it helps with bulk management. You can do get help on enable mailbox. Oh, by the way, I'm going to do this because I want you to see this. I'm going to do details so I see all. Let's just let it do its simple help. If you've probably noticed this, you've been working with Exchange, you've been using PowerShell, you've noticed that the Exchange commandlets, can sometimes have, shall we say, lots and lots of parameters. I mean, that's not even really that many. Go ahead and do it with set-mailbox, right? But look at all of those parameters. Well, sometimes it's hard to find parameters that you're looking for, so I have a tendency to do this. I'm going to show you a trick. I like to do parameter. I want to look to see if there's anything called archive in there. And what it'll do is it'll come up with, well, the parameters that let me do things with an archive. So if I forget how to enable a user to use an archive, I can go in here and look. And let me show you some of the options, because these are valuable options to know. So active domain. This is if you're doing a cloud-based domain in which your archive is going to be associated with. Now, we'll talk more about that when we're looking at something like O365. Now, what we're kind of interested in is this switch right here. Now, notice it is a switch parameter. It's called archive. This will turn the archive on for the user. However, you also want to specify an archive database and what database you want that archive located on. So those are the two things that I'm going to use. Now, there's a couple of other things out here, though. Oops, I made it go the wrong direction. Mouse is out of control. There's a couple of other things out here that you might use. Now, one of the things that you'll see is, I'm not going to change this right now, but an archive name, you can change the value per user if you wanted to on how this gets displayed in like Outlook and Outlook web app. Now, the default is going to be where it says, and it tells you here, the default name is online archive with that user's name. And most people are good with that, but you could change it. So you do have properties in here, parameters that'll let you modify this. But for our purposes, I only need 2 right now to be able to enable this. So what do you say? You want to enable Bob? Let's go ahead and enable Bob. So I like to do it this way. Get user, identity, and I'm going to grab Bob. The reason is you'll see here in a few minutes after we get this working, that I'm going to use this and pipe it to enable Mailbox instead, simply because I want to do bulk management. This makes it a lot easier. So here's Bob, and I want to enable Mailbox, and I want to enable the archive. Oops, archive, and the archive database. Remember, archive is just a switch, so there's no argument for it. Archive database, and give it the name of the database. It was archive. How creative. Archive, and strike enter. Now, this will go out, and this will enable the archive, set the archive up on that database, and life should be good. Now, here's the thing is, I like to check to see if this actually works. I like to check. Remember that test archive connectivity thing that we were doing? Let's try that. Let's try it. Let's try it. Test archive connectivity. Let's try it again here for user Bob S. at, and I always forget to make this their email. I just put in Bob S. and then it gives me an error, but always use your email. And let's see what it says here. Woo! Oh, come on, I'm pretty impressed. Look, successfully logged on to the archive mailbox. It's all good, man. It's all good. It's all good. Also, if you wanted to, you can also do things, and this is good for reports and stuff, like get mailbox identity Bob. And if you just strike enter, you don't see all the information. So if you send this to like a format list star, you'll see in this list, and I promise I won't make you go through this whole list, but through this list towards the top up here, you'll find all these archive settings. Oh, let's see, archive database that he has, archive right there. So he's set up for an archive. Also, and let me kind of clear this screen and minimize him. If I go back here and I refresh, so wait a second here. Let's. I'm in the ECP. Hello. Let's hit refresh. Do. Look. I know it's hard to see because I've got my resolution higher, but it says Bob Smith user has an archive, and over here it tells me what database it is. Archive. Maybe we should have called it Archive DB so it wasn't so confusing. Yay, Bob's got an archive. Now, nobody else has one. Nobody else has one. We're going to fix that in a minute. But first of all, let's test this archive. You want to test this? That way you can actually see it. If you haven't seen an archive before, the Microsoft way, this is actually kind of cool. So the first thing I need to do is I need to switch to my email, because I'm going to send Bob an email. And then Bob can decide if he wants to archive it or not. So let's see here. New email. New. Click on new. There we go. And I'm going to send this email to Bob. And let's come on, find Bob. There you go. Store me in your archive. How creative, yeah? Yeah? So store me. Store me. And I'll hit send. There it goes. Send. And off and away it goes. Now I'm going to flip over to a box where I've already signed in as Bob. And I want to show you what the screen kind of looks like. So here's Bob's email box. And I want you to notice this was before he had an archive. And that's why I wanted you to see it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and hit refresh. Whoops, not there, not there, not there, not there. Right here. Hit refresh. And you still don't see it. Well, let me show you why you still don't see it. I should have zoomed out here for a second. Oops. Oh, you still don't see it. Let me hit refresh again. Oh, tell you what. Let me just. Well, there's the email that I wanted stored in the archive, but I'm not seeing the archive over here. So, tell you what. Let's do this. Let's sign out of Bob and let's sign back into him. Usually, you can refresh it and it'll pop into a screen, but. Let me just go in here and I'll zoom back in. See, it's right down here. See, it just popped up. Let's go ahead and see if I can zoom back in here so you can zoom in and see it. So here's dun, 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 Bob's archive. I can click on Bob's archive. And right now, you know, Bob, I'm signed in as Bob. So here's my archive. Here's my inbox. Here's my archive. I can go to my archive and I can go, let's see, create a new folder as stuff from admin. There you go. And I can go to my inbox. There's that thing that says store me in your archive. Watch. And so now, and I know this sounds really stupid and childish, but watch. I can click and I can drag it into my archive. Now, before you go, stop being childish with me. There's a reason I just did it this way. This is what the problem is. This is the problem right here with what we have going right now for our MRM, our messaging records management. I just set up an archive for Bob, but guess what? Bob's got to manage this. Bob's got to go out there and make the folders. Bob's got to go out there and he gets to move the mail so he can move mail into his archive. Bob could even put in PSTs himself into his archive. I can do it from PowerShell and add stuff into the archive, which I'll show you those commandlets just to refresh your memory from the Greg Shields stuff. But here's the thing, and this is the point I can't let you forget. At this point, the user has to do it. That's why in the next video, that video on retention tags and policies ties so closely into this, where we can make decisions on when this happens automatically. So that's the important part. Anyways, you just got to see that Bob got an archive. That's kind of impressive. Let me flip back to the machine I'm doing my management on, and let's do one other thing. Well, a couple of other things real quick. So let's do this for more than just one user. Yeah? So this is why I like to use PowerShell for it. And this is just one way to do this. So instead of using identity like I did for Bob, I'm going to use organizational unit. And I happen to have an entire organizational unit out there of marketing. As a matter of fact, let me just hit enter. And you can see I've got, well, I guess not a whole bunch of users, but, you know, Mark Smith, all those kind of folks. What I can do then is just pipe to enable mailbox. See, it's the same thing now. It's the same thing. I can just hit archive and then the archive database, which I called archive, and strike enter. And guess what? All of those users, see how easy that was? I just gave all those users their archive database. All right, see, that was just, see, this is so cool. It's so cool that way. One other thing that I just wanted to remind you about is, and it's actually, you can always look this up if you need to. I just want to point something out that if you want to import mail PSTs, you can do that from PowerShell. There's a command that you need. It's called new mailbox, and I'm going to start to type this, and it's not going to work. New mailbox import request, and the reason it doesn't work is you need a special role to be able to do that. So this is one of those administrative roles in your security. And I'm just going to add it here real quick. New management role assignment and role, and the role is mailbox import export, and the user is going to be company administrator. Boink. So now that I have that role, I could actually use that commandlet. And that commandlet gives you a lot of flexibility. You can import PSTs from UNC locations. So if you used PowerShell to go out and find a user's PSTs, you can automatically now import those PSTs for the user so that it's not, the user doesn't have to even worry about it or think about it. That's what I like as management. So, and I'll just show you here. You do have the, I don't have a PST to import because that was really kind of the Greg Shields, that kind of thing, but new, oh man, I cannot type. New mailbox, import, mailbox, import, import, oh, you know what it is? I think I'm going to have to sign out and sign back in. Let's try that real quick. So you can look at the help file for this commandlet because there's a lot of interesting ways that you can use this. So let's see, what is it? New mailbox import. There we go. New mailbox import request. So now it's available now that I have that role. So the most important thing is setting up an archive is not that difficult. You can do it. You need to plan for it, plan your databases, and then get it set up. But you can see right here, worked out pretty quick, pretty simple. Setting up an archive, not too bad. In this video, we took a look at the messaging records management idea, that we've got all of this mail. What do we do with it? And we are not done with this yet. We still have the next video where we'll get into the retention tags. Some of this mail I may not want to keep, or I may not legally be allowed to keep very long. So we still got more to do with that, but we started off by setting up an archive, at least some place to store email in a cheaper storage environment that we can have users put their stuff into. And it's pretty simple to set up. It's very simple to plan for. We can use it on premises. We can use it in the cloud if we're hybrid mode. There are third-party options. So we did examine and plan for our archive, and then you have to admit, implementing it, not too bad at all. I did it through PowerShell, but you could do it graphically. It's not bad at all to implement the archive. The most important issue that we have right now, and this kind of ties back into MRM and how we'll fix it in the next video with retention tags, is that the users are the ones dealing with moving the mail into the archive. You know, I'd like to fix that. I'd like to help them out, and I also have some regulations. So we still have some more work to do, but I got to tell you, this was actually a lot of fun, wasn't it? I like archiving. So anyways, I hope this video was informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.